Hey everybody. So today we're on day 2 of the comeback. And we're also going to be looking at Acts chapter 8 verses 1 through 24. So in today's devotion it talked about the story of us. And it really starts digging into how we have a comeback story, how God can use us to have a comeback story. And one of the things it looks at is the story of Moses. And it talks about how, Moses was this Hebrew slave, or he was a Hebrew, who got the privilege of growing up in Pharaoh's house. And many years down the road, when he's a little bit older, he sees an Egyptian beating one of the Hebrew slaves, and it causes some intense anger, and he ends up killing the Egyptian, and he flees and goes out into the wilderness, onto the desert for 40 years. And so now, because he killed this slave when he's probably around 40 or so, and now 40 years later, he's probably about 80, and all of a sudden, when he thought life had passed him by, God speaks to him through a burning bush. God calls him out through a burning bush, and ultimately writes one of the greatest, and ultimately writes a huge comeback story for Moses, because here's this guy, he's really old, in his 80s, and right when most people would be thinking about the end of their life, God uses him and says, hey, I'm going to use you to set the Egyptians free, and I'm going to use you to bring my people back to the promised land, which I promised to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And ultimately through that, even though Moses had thought, his life was over, he had done a terrible thing, and now because of that, he'd ruined his life, and his life was basically over, out of that, God uses him to write such a marvelous comeback story. And it shows that even whenever we feel like we're at the end of our ropes, even whenever we feel like life has passed us by and that life is over for us, or we're not good enough to go and do whatever because we've made too many mistakes. Maybe we feel like Moses, I've messed up too much, I've done, maybe I haven't killed anybody, but maybe I've done some horrible things in my life, and I don't feel like I can do that, whatever it is God's asking me to do, because of the fact, I've done this, I have this past. Well, God says, I'm not through with you. I don't care what your past is. God says, your past does not matter to me. What matters to me is what you do with what I'm telling you to do. Because God can do anything. God can write the greatest comeback story that you and I have ever seen. And speaking of great comeback stories, over in Acts chapter 8, like I said, I encourage y'all to read Acts 8, 1 through 24, because in there we get introduced to a guy named Saul. We find out later that his name will eventually be changed to Paul. And this guy, he has a comeback story. Saul has quite a remarkable comeback story, because Saul, when you read it, you see that Saul was this guy who was going around and persecuting Christians because he was trying to stop this Christian faith, because he thought, that's what God wanted him to do. That he thought that would be the godly thing, to stop this Christian movement. He didn't really think that this was a God thing. And so, he was trying to put an end to it. And we see, I think in the next chapter, we'll see that God uses him to write such an incredible comeback story, because Saul, who eventually becomes Paul, becomes one of the, ends up writing over half of the New Testament and becomes this great missionary and takes the gospel to the ends of the earth. And so, he has a comeback story. If anybody has a comeback story, that guy's got a comeback story, because, it really shows that God can use anybody, that God can take us from any aspect of life, from any stage in life, and write an incredible comeback story, and write this incredible story for His glory, and just because He wants to. We don't have to have all these gifts and whatnot to have an incredible comeback story. We just got to be willing, we just got to be obedient, we got to be open to what God is doing in our lives. And so I encourage you to be open to what God is doing in your life. If you feel like He's telling you to do something, do it, because more than likely He's going to use you to have such a huge comeback, a comeback that you never thought was even possible. And so, yeah, I just encourage y'all to be encouraged, and I encourage y'all to subscribe, because I don't know, what do I know? Share with anybody you want to, because I do this not to make myself famous or in hopes that one day some famous person will see these blogs or something. No, I do this because I want y'all to be encouraged, and and I want y'all to grow as I grow in my walk with the Lord. I want y'all to grow, and I just want us to all fall more in love with Jesus. So that's the goal. So I'll see y'all later.